Hi, it's Katrina. My friend David is going to be helping me out with the voiceover today, so everyone give him a warm welcome.
Number 9. The Phantom Time Hypothesis. What if everything you knew about time was a lie? According to German historian Herbert Illig, the year isn't 2023, it's 1726. The German historian claims that the Gregorian Calendar is a fake and that most of the Middle Ages never happened. It sounds like something a crazy person would say, but Herbert isn't insane. He's a scientist who says he has archaeological evidence to prove what he's calling the Phantom Time Hypothesis. Herbert says the conspiracy began with Pope Sylvester II, Byzantine Emperor Constantine VII, and Roman Emperor Otto III. These three powerful men of the ancient world got together and changed the calendar. Emperor Otto wanted his reign to start in the year 1000 AD instead of when it really started in 996 AD. The reason behind this was that Otto thought 1000 sounded a lot better than 996. The trio then altered documents and created false historical events to make it happen. But they didn't just alter 4 years, they made up 297 years of history. The thought process behind the theory is that between 614 AD and 911 AD, nothing historically significant happened, and Herbert says there are discrepancies between the Julian calendar and the Gregorian calendar. He believes that the architecture in the 10th century was far too modern for when it was supposedly built. There are now supporters who believe the Middle Ages was 300 years shorter than it really was. That would mean Jesus Christ died 1700 years ago, not 2000 years ago like most biblical scholars would claim. Herbert and others who support his theory say there are documents that prove it, and apparently the church is in on it too, knowing full well that we are living in a completely wrong year. And now for number 8. But first I wanted to give a big shout out to Rashau Smith and Dr. Kraken. Thanks so much for watching and supporting OE. And if you're new here, be sure to subscribe and join the family. Number 8. An angel in the archives? There are a lot of strange and creepy theories about what's hiding in the Vatican's secret archives. Theories claim that proof of aliens, or possibly even proof of a different timeline, can be found within the archives. And apparently there might even be evidence to suggest that Jesus Christ never existed at all. Or on the other side, proof that Jesus was only a man, nothing more. There's a rumor that in the Vatican archive is a correspondence between Emperor Nero and St. Paul in the 1st century AD. The correspondence is between the two powerful men discussing what to do about the biological descendants of Jesus Christ. And if that's true, the ancient text would flip Christianity on its head. Another rumor, one that hasn't been substantiated and is a little outrageous, is that there's an angel in the Vatican. There are people out there who believe an angelic being is bound in chains somewhere deep beneath Vatican City. Then there's the weirdly popular myth of the Chronovisor. This is supposedly a machine that was built by Italian scientist and priest Father Pellegrino Maria Ernetti. It doesn't allow people to travel through time, but it does allow them to witness events that happened in the past. Priests of the church allegedly used the Chronovisor to go back in time and watch the crucifixion of Christ. Nobody really knows what's hidden in the deepest parts of the Vatican's secret vault, but there could be anything down there that's been accumulated by the Catholic Church over the past 2,000 years. Number 7. The donation of Constantine. The donation of Constantine is one of the most controversial medieval documents in the world. It's a forgery from the 8th century made to look like it was written in the 4th century by Roman Emperor Constantine. The document claims that between 315 AD and 317 AD, Emperor Constantine suffered from leprosy. It was such a heinous affliction that when Pope Sylvester I cured Constantine, he surrendered all of his power to the church. The emperor then gave all the authority and spiritual strength his empire had to the Roman Catholic Church. All of his lands and all of his influence was bestowed to the Pope, but because Pope Sylvester was a somewhat humble guy, he gave that power back. So what's the big deal about a forgery like this? Historians believe it was written with the intention to persuade Pepin the Short, king of the Franks, to hand over all his conquered lands to the church, or more specifically to Pope Stephen II. The document was then used again with Pepin's son Charlemagne when he came to power in 742 AD. But it didn't work this time. even though the Pope tried his best. Nobody knows who exactly wrote the forgery, only that it was made between 751 AD and 756 AD. Many lands and territories of the Lombards had been conquered by the Franks, and the church likely wanted those lands for themselves. So they came up with a clever ruse to give them godly authority to take them. The trick didn't work, but the text was used multiple times through the years by the church and its supporters to claim their right to certain lands. It wasn't proven to be a forgery until the 15th century, when scholar Lorenzo Valla confirmed it to be a fake. Number 6. Zealandia. The Vatican surely knows about all the secret parts of history that have been erased from the official books. Some say they know what really happened to Atlantis, but another bizarre conspiracy theory is that the Vatican is aware of a secret land called Zealandia, in which a mighty civilization prospered thousands of years ago. However, just like Atlantis, Zealandia disappeared under the waves and was lost forever to the sea. In 2017, an expedition discovered evidence of Zealandia beneath the waters of New Zealand. After all the rumors about the Vatican covering up the truth of an advanced civilization, modern scientists found that there really was another continent. Scientists are now calling it the 8th continent, and it was about the size of India. Today, it's almost entirely submerged, but it stretches for 2 million square miles, and researchers from the University of Queensland have already started to map its boundaries. Amazingly, what remains of Zealandia is populated by humans. Part of the continent is New Zealand itself, as well as its surrounding islands. New Zealand is the tallest part of the land mass, rising way above the rest of it like a great mountain. Researchers haven't found any evidence of an advanced civilization or a prehistoric war, though, and there isn't any real proof that the Vatican knew about the people of Zealandia before the continent was flooded. But still, it's quite a coincidence. Number 5. Prince Thutmose. In the book of Exodus, God sends a series of plagues to persuade the Pharaoh to allow the Israelites their freedom. Moses then parts the Red Sea, and they walk across the seabed to Israel. But when the Egyptian army follows them because the Pharaoh changed his mind, the waters return and wash them away. The story of Moses and the Israelites is one known even by people who aren't particularly religious. But what if Moses from the Bible wasn't who the book says he is? What if his real name was Prince Thutmose? Following the death of King Amenhotep III in 1351 BC, a man named Akhenaten took the throne. Akhenaten's real name was Amenhotep IV, and his brother was Thutmose, who was supposedly next in line for the throne. But his brother stole it from him, and suddenly Thutmose vanished from the histories of ancient Egypt. Some historians think he passed away, but before that he may have been forced into exile. If his brother had stolen the throne from him, Thutmose would have needed to get away before he was assassinated. In ancient Egypt, Thutmose was called the true king's son, and the word son translates roughly to Nosa, the last part of his name. In Greek, the version is Gnosis. The front part of his name, Thut, could also be translated to mean God. But what's so important about the prince's name? Well, if you look closely, it's extremely similar to Moses. If he needed to flee Egypt, he likely would have ditched the first part of his name to distance himself from Akhenaten. He may have also taken his followers with him across the Red Sea to Israel, people many refer to now as God's chosen people. Another important thing to note is that scholars believe the main Abrahamic religions came from the mysterious cult schools of ancient Egypt. So it could be that Moses was, in fact, an Egyptian prince, one that fled from his pharaoh brother to Israel. And that's where some scholars believe he helped create Judaism based on Egyptian cult beliefs. Do you think Moses was really Prince Thutmose from Egypt? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And while you're at it, subscribe to the channel. Now on to number 4. Number 4. Gabriel's Revelation. Museum curators in Israel have called Gabriel's Revelation the most important document found since the Dead Sea Scrolls. The script dates to either the 1st century BC or the early 1st century AD. But it's not exactly a paper document. It's a stone slab covered in strange prophecies. However, there's one prophecy in particular that has the religious community in shock. In 2008, the first English translation of the artifact was completed. One of the prophecies says in English, "The Messiah, son of Joseph, in 3 days you shall return to life." This is an obvious reference to the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ. The issue is that every scientific analysis of the stone has placed it at being made prior to the life of Jesus. If the stone was written before Jesus was born, how could it have possibly known that he would die and come back to life in 3 days? The stone is absolutely baffling. Israel Knoll, a famous biblical scholar and historian, said the stone should be enough cause for a total reassessment of Jewish and Christian scholarship. Nobody knows who wrote it for sure, but the stone's prophecies appear to be written by someone named Gabriel, who's assumed to be Archangel Gabriel. It was found randomly on the eastern banks of the Dead Sea in the year 2000, so nobody even knows where exactly it came from. Number 3. Jesus' rainbow body. The Feast of the Transfiguration is a celebration of the biblical event in which Jesus appeared to the chosen witnesses, John, Peter, and James. Alongside Jesus were 2 of the Hebrew prophets, Moses and Elijah. And one of the most astonishing parts of the story is that the disciples of Jesus couldn't have possibly recognized Moses or Elijah since they existed hundreds of years earlier. But what if the disciples recognized the prophets because of their glowing forms? According to the book of Genesis, Elijah never died. He was carried to heaven by a chariot of light. Some think that's a reference to a spaceship, but others believe it's because he transformed into pure spiritual energy. In the book of Exodus, Moses is described as emitting divine light when he was alive. And based on some legends, Moses even produced a large burst of colorful light upon his death. When the 3 men appeared to the disciples, they knew who they were because of their rainbow bodies. Rainbow body is a spiritual phenomenon in which someone achieves the highest level of enlightenment. In Buddhist mythology, those who achieve this enlightenment become light itself. Many believe that's what happened to Jesus Christ and to Elijah and Moses. And there are even cases of it happening as recently as the 1990s. The latest man to do it was Khenpo Cho in 1998, though the event was poorly documented and not everyone believes it happened. But what does the theory of the rainbow body have to do with the church? It's because many think Jesus was a Buddhist, or that he at least supported Buddhist philosophies. So it could be that the Catholic Church is covering up Jesus Christ's true beliefs. Number 2. The African Popes. Long before the United States of America had a black president, the Vatican had a black pope. There have been 3 African popes in the Church's history, maybe even more. Their rule over the Holy See isn't forgotten, but it certainly isn't something the Church talks about. But deep in the archives of the Vatican is the truth behind the African popes. Saint Victor I became the 14th pope in 189 AD, and he sat on the papal throne for 10 years. He was the one behind Easter being celebrated on Sunday as a standard practice, and he was also the first pope to celebrate Mass in the Latin language. But little else is known about him, only that he died in 199 AD and was buried in the Vatican. It's unclear where he came from, but scholars know he was black because of the drawings made of him during his time as pope. Then there was Saint Miltiades in 311 AD. He was only the pope for 3 years, ruling the Vatican in a time when Christians were just gaining their freedom to practice their religion. Up until this time, Christians were still hiding in catacombs to worship their god. The last known African pope was Gelasius I, who took the papal throne in 492 AD. It's believed he saved Rome from a famine and insisted the church use a quarter of its revenue for charity. He also abolished something called Lupercalia. This was a pagan tradition in which young people dressed in skins and ran wildly around the city to chase away bad luck. Although historians know these 3 popes had black skin, they don't know the exact circumstances that led them to take control of the Vatican. The 3 popes almost definitely came from somewhere in North Africa, not because of their appearance, but because North Africa was part of the Roman Empire. It wouldn't have been unusual at all for people with black skin to participate in the early church. Don't forget that in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, there were barely any pale-skinned Europeans. Number 1. The Scythians. The Scythians were a group of Gnostics who likely flourished even before the first Christian churches were built. They were influenced heavily by Platonism and had an unusual belief when it came to the idea of cosmic creation. Their name, the Scythians, came from Seth, the 3rd son of Adam and Eve. They believed Seth was a divine incarnation of a godly being, and they also believed that they had secret knowledge to unlock full and total understanding of the universe. But apparently, they were the only ones who had it. Scholars like Gershom Scholem admit that Gnosticism came long before Christianity. There were different branches throughout the ages, and each one was weirder than the next. The Sethians believed in an invisible god that was so powerful and omnipotent it was beyond description. And this is very similar to what the ancient Greek philosophers like Plato and Parmenides wrote. It was their thought that God's essence was responsible for creating male and female beings on planet Earth. Then the false god named Yaldabaoth created evil entities called Archons to craft a physical world of torment for God's essence. It becomes a little hard to follow, but in a nutshell, human beings are made from the essence of God. However, the anti-god made the physical world to trap his essence, aka human beings. Therefore, the Sethians believed that the only way to reach heaven was to free themselves from the physical realm. And so, eating the fruit in the Garden of Eden was seen as the first stage to ridding the world of oppressive anti-God powers. As you can surely imagine, Christianity wasn't very excited about dealing with the people who believed in what must have seemed like a fairy tale. Even though the Sethians came along before the first Christian church, they didn't last very long once Christianity got going. And over time, the church did an excellent job at eradicating Gnostic religious groups. What do you think the Vatican knows that they aren't telling us? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you in the next one. Bye.